first time Karen stood on my porch, she didn't knock. She banged hard, like she owned the place. Like I was some tenant late on rent. And the worst part? She didn't even say hello. She just snarled. "Do you know what you've done? You can't just buy this house outside of our HOA. It belongs with us." I swear my porch light flickered at that exact moment.
Ass!
As if the house itself shuddered at her arrogance. Now let me take you back a step. Because this wasn't just about a house. This was about dignity. About my family. About a promise I made to my late father. The house in question? It wasn't some random property. It was my grandparents' old place. The one with the oak tree in the front yard that my grandfather planted the day my father was born. The one where we'd gather every summer for barbecues. And where my grandma used to sit on the porch swing, humming hymns while shelling peas. When my father passed, I swore I'd keep a piece of him alive. And when this house came up for sale, neglected, almost forgotten, I bought it. Not for profit. Not for power. But for family. For roots, the catch? It sat just outside the official boundaries of the local HOA. Technically, they had zero authority here. But Karen, oh Karen, didn't see it that way. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Middle-aged, sharp-tongued, always in pastel cardigans. Clutching a clipboard like it was a sword, she ran the neighborhood like a private kingdom, handing out fines for things as small as leaving a garden hose visible or parking a truck in a driveway overnight. And now, she decided my family home, my sanctuary, was theirs. Her words that day still echo. "We'll seize you by force if we have to." I remember blinking at her, stunned. "This house is mine." It was my grandfather's. "It's outside your HOA. You can't touch it." She leaned in so close I could smell her perfume, too sweet, like rotting fruit under a layer of sugar. "We'll see about that," she hissed. And just like that, my peaceful dream of restoring my grandparents' house turned into a battleground. The first few weeks should have been beautiful. I had plans to restore the porch swing, repaint the shutters, and clear out the garden beds where my grandma once grew sunflowers. But every nail I hammered, every brushstroke I painted, Karen was there, watching, taking notes. Neighbors whispered too. Some pitied me. Others avoided eye contact altogether. One older man muttered while walking his dog, "You don't know what you're up against." Karen doesn't let go. At night I'd sit on the porch steps, sipping coffee, staring at the oak tree, and wondering how something as simple as honoring my father's memory had turned into open warfare. And then the letters began. They came in thick white envelopes, stamped with the HOA's logo. At first I thought it was a mistake. Violation notice, unauthorized property improvements. Fine, $250. I laughed bitterly. They weren't even subtle. The letter went on about how the community's standards didn't allow for unapproved exterior painting. Never mind that my house wasn't even within their jurisdiction. I tore the letter up. But the next day, another arrived. And another. The fines grew larger. $500, $750. One letter even claimed they'd place a lien if I didn't comply. And that's when the fear crept in. Because I knew HOAs had power within their own borders. But outside, could they twist laws, manipulate records, and actually come after me? I called my sister, who lived 2 states away. She was silent for a moment on the phone, then said softly, "Dad always said that house would test us someday. Maybe this is what he meant." Her words hit me. Maybe this wasn't just about fighting Karen. Maybe it was about proving that our family's dignity couldn't be bullied away. But dignity doesn't come without scars. One evening, as the sun set and the sky burned orange over the lake, I saw flashing red and blue lights outside. Police. 2 cruisers parked right in front of my driveway. Karen was there too. Of course, arms folded, lips curled in smug satisfaction, the officer approached me slowly. "Sir, we've had reports of disturbances here." I stared at him in disbelief. "Disturbances? I've done nothing wrong." Kieran piped up behind him, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "He's renovating illegally. He's lowering our property values. He doesn't belong here." The officer sighed. He seemed embarrassed, but he had to follow protocol. After a short conversation, they left. But the damage was done. Neighbors peered out from their blinds. Whispers spread like wildfire. Karen had managed to paint me as the villain in my own family's story. That night, sat on the porch swing, the same one I'd just finished restoring, and I cried. Not loud sobs, but the quiet kind that shake you from the inside out. I cried because I felt my father's memory being trampled. I cried because I felt powerless. And I cried because deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't going to stop. And if I didn't fight back, I'd lose not only the house, but the very dignity my family had built for generations. I remember whispering into the night, almost like a prayer, Dad, if you're watching, I'm going to fight. For you. For this house. For us, and that's when I made the decision, no more ignoring letters. No more letting Karen control the story. I was going to gather proof, gather allies, and show everyone once and for all that this house, this legacy, was untouchable. But what I didn't know yet, Karen was preparing her most outrageous move yet, and it would shake the entire neighborhood to its core. The morning after those police lights flickered outside my house, I woke up to find something nailed to my oak tree. It wasn't a child's note or a neighbor's flyer. It was a laminated sign. Bold red letters screamed across it, "This property is under review for HOA seizure." I stood there barefoot in the damp grass, staring at it like it was some cruel joke. But deep down, I knew exactly who had put it there. Karen. I ripped the sign down, my hands shaking with anger. The oak tree groaned in the wind, almost like it was reminding me, this house has stood for generations. Don't let them break you now. But I couldn't shake the fear. Seizure? Could an HOA really seize property outside their borders? I spent the rest of that day making phone calls. The county office confirmed what I already suspected. Karen and her board had zero legal authority here. But that didn't mean she couldn't make my life hell by faking claims, twisting rules, and dragging me into court just to bleed me dry. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about Karen wanting control. This was about power. She wanted to make an example of me. That evening I heard footsteps crunching on my gravel driveway. I walked out and found an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a typed letter, cold and clinical. Final warning. Comply with HOA standards or face forcible removal. Forcible removal. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. My father's old coffee mug sat beside me, chipped at the rim. I ran my thumb across it, whispering, "Dad, what would you do?" And the answer came in my memory. His voice, steady, calm. When someone threatens your home, you don't hide. You stand taller. You remind them who you are. The next day I did something bold. I stood on my porch in broad daylight, holding that letter for the whole street to see. Neighbors peeked out, curious. Karen was strutting down the sidewalk with her ever-present clipboard. I raised my voice, letting it carry. This house is mine. It's not part of your HOA. And if you think you can scare me out, you're wrong. Ooh. Karen froze, her face tightening. Then she smirked. You're making a mistake. People here like order. They don't like troublemakers. But here's the thing. When a bully tries to humiliate you, sometimes it backfires. Because one neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a widow in her 70s who lived down the street, stepped off her porch and called out, "He's right! That house isn't yours, Karen. Leave him alone." Others murmured. Some still looked afraid, but the ice was cracking. Karen's smirk faltered. For the first time I saw uncertainty in her eyes, but Karen wasn't done. No, she was only getting started. 2 nights later, I was jolted awake by a sound no homeowner ever wants to hear, breaking glass. I rushed to the living room. The side window was shattered. A brick lay on the floor, shards of glass glittering around it like cruel stars. Taped to the brick was another message. Leave, or else. My chest pounded. Not just from fear, but from rage. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was violence. I called the police. They came, filed a report, but shrugged like their hands were tied. No cameras, no witnesses, one officer muttered. But I knew. I knew whose fingerprints were all over this. And that night, sitting on the couch with the broken window boarded up, I promised myself Karen was not going to win. I started documenting everything. Every letter, every fine, every threat. I even set up cameras around the property, hidden but watching, and you wouldn't believe it the very next week. The footage paid off Karen herself, under the cover of dusk. Creeping onto my lawn with another sign in her hands, she was about to stake it into the ground when the porch light clicked on automatically. She froze, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. The camera caught everything. When she noticed, she bolted, her pastel cardigan flapping behind her. I smiled grimly. Finally, I had proof, but I didn't use it right away. No, I wanted to be smart instead. Started reaching out quietly to other neighbors. I found people who had been bullied by Karen too. One man told me she'd fined him $300 because his daughter's tricycle was left on the lawn overnight. Another said she'd threatened to sue him for planting unapproved roses. It wasn't just me. She'd been terrorizing this community for years, and slowly, people started siding with me. But Karen must have sensed the shift, because she unleashed her most outrageous stunt yet. It was a Saturday morning when I opened my door to find 3 men in reflective vests standing outside. Behind them was a tow truck. "Sir," one of them said, "we've been hired by the HOA to remove unauthorized vehicles from this property." My jaw dropped. "What unauthorized vehicles?" "That's my truck. It's in my driveway. And this isn't even HOA property." They exchanged uneasy glances. "Look, we're just doing our job." Before I could answer, Karen herself marched up, triumphant. "Take it. He's been warned." Neighbors were gathering now, phones out, recording. This was it. This was the showdown. I stepped in front of my truck, voice steady, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're trespassing, and I have proof. Karen, you've been caught on my cameras, harassing, trespassing, threatening." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face drained of color. I held up my phone. One more move, and this footage goes straight to the county sheriff. And to the news. "Let's see how much power you have then." The man in vests backed away. The tow truck rumbled off. Karen just stood there, trembling with rage, her voice breaking as she screamed. "This isn't over." "We'll seize you by force if we have to." Her words echoed through the street, chilling and desperate. But this time, the crowd wasn't on her side. People muttered, shook their heads. Some even laughed bitterly. Karen stormed off. But I knew the battle was reaching its climax. That night, I sat under the oak tree again, the air cool and quiet. I thought of my father, my grandparents, all the memories woven into these walls. Karen thought this was just about control. But for me, this was about something much deeper. It was about family honor. About standing your ground when someone tries to take what's yours, and I knew then the next move had to be mine. The question was, how do you bring down someone who thrives on fear? The answer came the next morning, in the form of a neighbor knocking on my door. It was Mrs. Henderson again. She handed me a manila folder. "I thought you might need this," she said. Inside were old HOA meeting notes, printed emails, even signed complaints. And in them, clear as day, were records of Karen overstepping her authority, pocketing fine money, and intimidating residents into silence. It was dynamite, the kind of evidence that could not only protect my home, but finally expose Karen for who she really was. And so, I made my plan. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. Because if Karen wanted a war, I was going to give her one. And this time I wasn't fighting alone. The night before the showdown, I barely slept. The manila folder from Mrs. Henderson sat on my kitchen table, glowing under the lamplight like a weapon forged for justice. Inside was everything I needed: records, emails, and signed statements proving Karen had abused her. HOA power for years. Every creak of the old house reminded me what was at stake. This wasn't just drywall and shingles. This was my father's memory, my grandparents' legacy, the soil where that oak tree had stood since the day my dad was born. I whispered to the empty kitchen, Tomorrow, Dad. Tomorrow, we win. Morning came, crisp and bright. But the tension was thick enough to choke on. The HOA had called an emergency meeting in the community hall, a beige, soulless building 2 blocks away that Karen treated like her throne room. Word spread fast. By noon, neighbors were already whispering, speculating. Some said Karen planned to officially vote to seize my property. Others muttered about police escorts. I walked there slowly, folder in hand, every step heavy but steady. When I entered, the room fell silent. Karen sat at the front, clipboard in her lap, lips curled into that familiar smug smile. Behind her, the board members, all hand-picked allies, nodded like loyal soldiers. She stood. Let's get straight to it. This. Outside her, she practically spat the word, has brought chaos to our community. He refuses to follow rules. He disrespects our authority, and he lowers our property values. It is time we take decisive action. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, but many looked uneasy. Karen's eyes gleamed. She thought she had one. That's when I stood up. Funny, I said, holding up the folder, because I have evidence that shows this meeting isn't about rules or values. It's about you, Karen, your greed, your lies, your abuse of power. Gasps filled the hall. Karen's smile faltered. I opened the folder, pulling out page after page. Here's a record of fines you issued for things that aren't in the bylaws. Here's proof you pocketed money from those fines instead of reporting them. And here I waved an email. Hi, is you threatening a neighbor with legal action if they spoke out? The crowd erupted. Whispers turned to shouts. Phones came up, recording every word. Karen's face flushed crimson. She stammered, That's fabricated. Lies. He's making it up. But Mrs. Henderson stood too. Her voice, though frail, rang with authority. I kept these records for years, because I knew someday the truth would matter. And today, it does. The room went wild. Neighbors who'd lived in fear finally found their voices. A man shouted, She'll fine me $200 for leaving my Christmas lights up too long. Another yelled, She threatened to tow my car because it was too old. The board members looked shaken, whispering nervously among themselves. Karen slammed her clipboard down, desperate now. Enough. You think this changes anything? This man's house is still ours to control. The HOA rules apply. That was my cue. I pulled out one final document, a county zoning map. I held it high for everyone to see. This is the official boundary. My house sits outside the HOA, always has, always will. You have no jurisdiction, no claim, nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the laughter, bitter, relieved. Triumphant laughter from the crowd. Karen's power crumbled in that instant. She screamed, actually screamed. This isn't over. We'll seize you by force if we have to. But the words rang hollow now. People shook their heads, disgusted. One man muttered, She's lost it. And then almost poetically the doors opened and 2 sheriff's deputies walked in, apparently. Someone had tipped them off about the evidence. They walked straight to Karen, asked her a few questions, and then escorted her out as the crowd recorded every step. The self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. Dragged away under flashing lights, the hall buzzed with stunned relief. For the first time in years, people felt free. I walked home slowly, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in warm gold. The oak tree swayed gently like it was applauding. Neighbors stopped me along the way. Thank you for standing up to her.
You saved this neighborhood.
You honored your family. But the truth? I hadn't done it alone. Mrs. Henderson, my neighbors. Even my late father's voice in my memory, they'd all carried me through. That night I sat on the restored porch swing. The crickets sang. The air was cool. I thought about Karen and I almost pitied her. Almost. Because in the end, all her power, her threats, her clipboard, none of it meant anything. What matters is respect, family, legacy, things she could never control. I thought about my dad again. I imagined him sitting beside me, sipping coffee from his chipped mug, smiling quietly, and I whispered, "We did it, Dad. The house is safe. Our dignity is safe." To anyone listening, let me say this. Neighbors, HOAs. Even people in your own family, some will try to bully you, control you, strip you of your dignity. But dignity isn't something they can take. It's something you protect. Something you live by. And when you stand your ground, when you say, "This far, no further," you remind them that home isn't just a house. Home is where your memories live, where your family's story is written. Karen lost everything that day. Her power, her reputation, even her so-called friends on the board abandoned her. But me? I gained something far greater, not just victory, not just relief, but peace. Peace knowing my father's legacy will stand tall like that oak tree, long after Karen's name is forgotten. So if you've ever faced an entitled neighbor, an HOA nightmare, or someone who thought they could bully you into silence, know this, you're not alone. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't shouting back. It's standing firm, proving them wrong, and walking away with your head held high. Because respect isn't given by force. It's earned through honor. And to all of you listening, tell me your story. Have you faced a Karen? An HOA gone wild? A neighbor who thought they owned more than their share? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear it. We all do. Because when we share these stories, we remind each other that dignity still matters. And as for me, I'll keep sitting on this porch swing under the oak tree, watching the sunset, proud, at peace. And forever grateful that no HOA, no Karen could ever take this away.